Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So first and foremost, every time I get a New Yorker on this show, and especially if I get a New Yorker from Brooklyn, I have to give a shout out to my hometown. So we got Borough Park in the building. Those that don't know where Borough Park is right next to Sunset Park. It's on the south end of Brooklyn. So my eCom accounting boss. My man, the floor is yours. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what we're talking about today?
Hi, so thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. My name is Nachman, and I'm the CEO and founder of ConnectBooks.
Hmm.
My background is in accounting. Um, I started a bookkeeping company 5 years ago where I was doing accounting work for a large wholesale company. I was looking to do something more on my own.
Mhm.
So that's when I started this bookkeeping company. And as I started this bookkeeping company, I started working with Amazon sellers. And we had a kind of interesting story at that point. We had two people who were splitting up, and the partner A was buying partner B. But in Amazon, these two types of businesses. You have they call private label, and then you have the retail arbitrage. So retail means like you buy like a lot of branded products, like you buy, let's say, DeWalt, Nike, Ninja, anything else you'll find there. And then private label means that you just make your own brand. Like, for example, you'll go to China, you source your products, and you'll put your own label on it. So this company and private label, usually people would carry like sometimes two or three items. I even had customers only sell one type of product on Amazon. They'll go up to a couple hundred, but you won't see like 10,000, 10,000 items on a private label. Retail arbitrage, people can sell 20,000 different products because they'll have softwares that are pulling, managing all these moving parts, and they're going to try to look for deals all over the place.
Hmm.
So this company was a private label company, and they had 10 products in Amazon, and Mr. A was only a partner in 3 out of the 10 products. So when Mr. B said, when they were splitting up, they need to know the profitability in every single product.
Mhm.
And plus, Mr. B wanted to buy off Mr. A, but he was like, okay, if the business made, let's say, $100,000, doesn't mean that we're giving you 50, because we need to know how much just these 3 products made. They weren't 50-50. And that was a complicated part. Plus, one partner was scared another partner might be embezzling money and other stuff. So I had a big job to like take the last 2 years worth of data and kind of dig through it, from A to Z, to really get a deep understanding of what's going on here. And that's when I came up with this idea, like I was looking to expand my bookkeeping company. And I was like, hey, if I can just take this work that I did now and kind of expand in the Amazon industry, this could be a game changer for my bookkeeping company. So I had a friend then who was he was doing programming, and he had an office right next to mine. And I was like, so the way I did all this work for them, this company that I've been working for, was I downloaded a lot of spreadsheets from Amazon, like text files, put them into Excel, and we built our own macros and formulas. We built this whole spreadsheet. But really, that was very good just for a guy like me. My staff wouldn't be able to deal with it. It's not something, if there's any little change in the formula, something goes wrong. It was very complicated. So I wanted to automate that process, and I started thinking that if I can take this process that I'm doing this for this customer and kind of build it into a software and automate it, then it's gonna go. So I reached out to this. So this programmer told me he can, develop such a type of software. And originally, when we started developing software, it was just in-house. We wanted to use the software just to grow our bookkeeping company and, just kind of get more clients. And as we were, I started speaking to Amazon sellers, and they were like, this is very cool product, something we can use, but we're not going to give you all our bookkeeping. We have like bookkeepers, CFOs, and all those stuff in house. So we'll just take the tool in house, plug it in, and use it. So we kind of made a 360-degree on our software development. And I mean, we still developed it the same way, but we had to add on a lot of new features like users and billing and all that kind of stuff. And we also needed to design it way fancier and better, that, it should be something that we can sell to the public. So we kind of at that point started selling it to the public. And So that's where really it came across, where we kind of took the company, split it in two, and we continued running our bookkeeping division. And then we kind of continued to develop the software, which to date we have over 1,000 customers using our software every single day.
So I mean, that's a hell of a story, and I want the listener to really listen to his nuances, right? First of all, his customer kind of delegated the direction of what the company should go into based upon the supply and demand, right? So like my next question is obviously you knew Amazon was a big player, but your software also patches directly into Shopify, Walmart, eBay, and also on the back end of QuickBooks. So like, how did that play into it? Because I mean, those are completely different languages. Are you more doing API integrations? Like, how does the connections work?
So I'm actually not a developer.
Hmm.
I'm just an accountant, and I hired a team. And today we have a team of developers, working on a product. So the product started originally on Amazon. And the way we integrate is API integrations. We do API calls. Last month, Amazon sent us a report. Amazon recently rolled out a new API. They made us switch over to it. So they're kind of like going through all applications. So they sent us a report last month that we made like 1 million calls. That was only for 1 month. We do like 100. We do a lot of calls every single day back and forth to Amazon for every single account, to kind of get all that information that's needed and necessary, like the orders, products, and stuff like that. Now, the software is an integration to QuickBooks, meaning we didn't develop our own accounting system, but what we did is we insert the data for you in QuickBooks. So it's really with a one-click button that everything comes in. And we kind of set it up the right way for you. So there's a lot of hurdles that you're going to have to go through in terms of like understanding, how do I set this up? How do I set that up? How do I set up all this information in QuickBooks? And besides just like automating the process, we also automate the setup for you. Like we set everything up for you. Obviously, everything is customizable. So that's kind of like the bridge between we work. We work between Amazon and QuickBooks. Then at some point, as we were expanding, we wanted to add on, we wanted to add on more and more stuff. So we kind of added on eBay, we added on Walmart, and now we're actually just launched our Shopify integration. It was on beta up for like last 2 or 3 months. Shopify, I would say, is like a beer on its own. It's like very, very different. Most other marketplaces try to copy the Amazon way. Like, for example, Walmart is pretty much like even the way they operate. Like, let's say, for example, the way you get paid, right? So in Amazon, if you're an Amazon seller, they'll pay you once every 2 weeks, and they'll tell you, okay, we sent you $100,000 in your bank, and then you can pull a different report which will give you the breakdown of that $100,000. Walmart kind of does the same. eBay started doing the same this year. eBay used to be different. eBay bought off PayPal, but if you purchase something on eBay, you can pay via PayPal. But the sellers also got paid via PayPal. The money would come into their PayPal account. At this point, PayPal is out of the picture, which makes it much easier in terms of like bookkeeping and all that. So eBay, I forgot what they call it. They call it, they can have some name for like eBay deposit to eBay money. I forgot offhand what it was. And the money also comes in, I think it comes in more every day, but they stopped this whole loop working through PayPal and taking PayPal fees and all that. And Shopify also started working that way, meaning to say, where you have like the money comes in like once a day. But the hardest thing of Shopify in terms of bookkeeping, which that's really where we excelled a lot, and that was very different than Amazon, is that Shopify offers their customers to get paid in many different ways. Meaning to say, Shopify lets you, if you want to, let's say, use a firm, right? So a firm is a company that if you want to buy, if let's say I have a Shopify website and I'm selling, let's say, a high ticket item for $1,000, you want to get 10 months to pay for it. You can like install like a little plugin, which would say, okay, apply for credit and, like get 0% interest or whatever the deal is, and you can pay over time. So the seller, however, gets the money right away the next day from a firm. So that kind of all gets very confusing in terms of Shopify bookkeeping, because you can enable so many different ways how to get paid besides meaning you can enable customers to pay you through your Shopify platform from so many different ways besides using the Shopify platform, which that makes it more complicated. So we kind of connect with those 4 marketplaces, and we have more to come. And then we pull together all the accounting data, and then we'll bring it into QuickBooks.
All right, so let's talk about this, right? So, I mean, obviously, someone that has QuickBooks and that QuickBooks may be connected to Shopify, maybe connected to like Amazon, it may be connected to PayPal. You sell something and it comes back in, and maybe you run your profit loss sheets and you're trying to figure out, okay, maybe I bought $10,000 worth of product and I converted that into 20,000. What's my margins and all that? But you're saying essentially your software does that for them on a daily, on a fly, so they can get a visual representation to know exactly where they are with their costs and their margins without even having to log into QuickBooks. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'll kind of take that. What we do is two stuff. We kind of bring the data into our database because we're the middleman between the two platforms. And then we also do on our website reporting. Like if they want to see if they make money on a certain product, they see it on their website. And besides that, we get the data into QuickBooks. Now, one of the things we kind of differ from, I would say, from everybody is when we send the data to QuickBooks, one of the things we focus a lot is that it should match the bank account. So a lot of times these softwares that kind of like sync over every single order. And then what ends up happening is you get like you have so many different orders. And when you reconcile your bank and you're kind of trying to take those orders, when you reconcile the bank and you're kind of trying to take those orders and match it back up to the bank account, it's like almost impossible. You're probably going to spend 2 weeks just figuring that out itself. So the way we bring it into QuickBooks in a certain way where it's automatically going to match your bank. So in terms of reconciling or matching it up to your bank, it's a no-brainer. However, we kind of cut a lot of corners in the other end, meaning to say in terms of like analyzing the data, you don't need to have every single order in QuickBooks. It's just going to overload and slow the system. So for that part, what we do is we do the reporting on our website. Now on our website, the reporting is way more clear and it's way more nicer because we can customize it to what we need. Like, for example, we'll show you every single SKU with a picture of the product. So if you forgot what the SKU is, you see a picture. And then we have also like all different types of filters. Like you can filter, we have on every column on the report, we'll have a filter. So if you want to filter any product like less than 10% profit margin, you just go to that column profit margin and filter less than 10%. In QuickBooks, you don't have that option because it's just like a report. You could try to filter the whole report, but you can't specify one that. So there's a lot of like, and it goes back originally to one of the things which makes our software unique is that a lot of times you have like softwares that are developed by programmers. Like a programmer comes up with some sort of idea, and that's when they start to pitch it. We're actually accountants and we're actually doing accounting and we're doing the bookkeeping work. And we develop it from a bookkeeping perspective, not from a programming perspective, which gives a whole different look as how the program works and how the program operates. So in terms of, let's say, for example, like whatever we'll tell you to do is something that we do. And that's kind of how we built it. So originally, like when we built the ConnectBooks software, we had it in mind to match the bank because that was for us the most important part. Meaning to say, when I give somebody a P&L from QuickBooks and I tell them, hey, you lost, I have now one customer. They're a very big seller. They do like I say 3 million a month and 3 million sales. And last month they had a loss of like 100,000. And here starts the $1 million question. Is this accurate or is it not? They're saying it doesn't make sense. I'm saying, well, numbers are numbers. Now, if all the numbers that come into QuickBooks match a bank account and there's no like clearing account, I'm like, hey, I know I recorded $2 million in sales, but your deposit was, let's say, $1 million. And these all numbers total up. And I can work backwards and I can prove that to them and I can show them these are the numbers and these actually match what hit your bank. So there's not really too much you can tell me. There's not really you can say it's wrong. Versus if you're kind of doing different assumptions, not matching the bank or like, oh, I'll do that next month or this month, then like when the numbers don't show the way you want and you start to question them, it's like really, really a nightmare. So what we're saying is that originally we built it to match always the bank. And then we also used to do certain reporting in QuickBooks. However, we bumped into a lot of limitations. So that's when we decided to build out the reporting tool on the website, which we kind of work with both at this point.
Very cool, very cool. So I mean, obviously, all of this, right? I mean, I think at one point in time you were doing like revenue of 10,000 K per month, and obviously you scaled way past that. So I want to kind of talk about like your journey to get to where you are. Why did you decide to do a bootstrapping model, right? And those that don't understand bootstrapping is essentially you're not going out raising equity, you're not asking for angel investments. You're doing it out of your own pockets. You're doing it from the ground up. So like, why did you choose that method versus getting an equity raise?
So it's quite interesting, my journey. So to be honest, when I went into software, I had no clue what the word software means.
Mm,
And when someone asks me today, like I speak to people all the time, and someone, let's say, calls into our company to use our software, the first thing what we always try to do is to make sure they're a fit. And if they're not a fit, it's just in their benefit, because we don't want churn. We don't want people signing up and making us crazy and then canceling. So we kind of discussing on the options. We try not to be pushy on the sale. It's more of like an education approach where we'll educate the client what's missing and what we can do for them, and kind of see if those work. And I always had this question, I'm going to develop my own custom software. I'm going to do everything myself, because in Amazon, I would say, there isn't one software that nails everything.
mhm,
Every software, like we're one of the best in accounting, but we don't do any shipping. We don't do order manager. We don't do any of those other stuff. And the order managers would be like 5 other like gigantic softwares and another like 20 small ones. So it kind of like you want to know where, like what to use. And in every software, there's going to be something that you're not going to have. Like I need this, he needs this, and they need this. And everybody has their like ways how they run their business.
mhm.
So that's where it's going to get a little bit confusing. And people always tell me, like, I'm going to develop on my own. I tell them, developing a software on your own, you're probably looking at least $500,000 a year in maintenance. Meaning, if you're planning to go scale, I know $500,000. In our case, it's more than $500,000 just on maintenance. Meaning, forget about that. That doesn't include adding any new features, just to maintain and continue supporting the growth. And obviously, we're also adding new features as well. So maintenance is a very heavy, expensive package, which I had no clue about that. And I just didn't do any research. I really trusted my friend. And my friend said that when I was discussing about developing the software, his original estimate was like $15,000-$20,000, which was like, oh, no joke. Here, let's just make it. And before we turned around, we were up to 75. And once I was really stuck in that game, I just kept on going. However, if I would have probably taken more like a researchable approach, that what I should have probably done, I would have probably come to other companies and they would have told me to develop such software as a minimum of $500,000, and you're gonna need this, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need that. So I didn't go that approach, and I went bootstrapped, and I just stayed that way. And we're a profitable company at this point, so we're just continuing to stay bootstrapped.
I think it's interesting because I mean, hearing you talk, I mean, in one aspect you sound very risk adverse, but at the other time, you sounded like you were willing to take a risk. So I want you to kind of like, if you can pick 3 to 5 words to define your type of personality and who you are, what would those 3 to 5 words be to describe you?
What do you mean, like in terms of like, be clear on the question?
So if I was going to pick a word, right, to define you, would it be passionate? Would it be an action taker? Would it be caring? Like one single word, 3 to 5 of them to define you and your characteristics.
I would say probably the biggest thing is that I'm probably a very strong go-getter,
Hmm.
and I'm also very passionate on what I do. And I would say I always try to do things with clarity.
I mean, I can definitely see the passionate side of it. I mean, did you know that the Hebrew definition or one of the Hebrew definitions of your actual name means compassionate? Did you know that?
Yeah, I never thought of it in that term, but
Yeah.
just yeah, kind of.
So it's funny that you fall into that bracket. So I mean, I definitely see it all day, every day, right? So I mean, kind of talking about compassion, like when you're talking to your customers, I mean, are you more so like the accountant that's looking at the numbers, or are you looking more so for the results to help that client grow?
So our mission is always built around clarity, and that's what I always focus on. I always say, what's the difference between bookkeepers and accountants? And accountants, what the way I look at them more is I mean, the accountant does at the end of the year the tax filing. Now, if you have good books and things are set up properly, then when it comes to tax filing, it should be very simple. You just go to QuickBooks, you pull those reports, and then you kind of work with them and get it done properly.
Mhm.
The problem is when the numbers don't make sense, and that's kind of where the accountant becomes the bookkeeper at some point, or becomes like the biggest consultant, because they're just trying to make sense out of the books. And I've seen these companies day in, day out. So when the bookkeeping is done properly and things are set up right, the tax filing is fairly simple.
Mm.
You see what you have, you kind of take your deductions, you kind of work with it, and you work along. The other thing is, in terms of what I would say, bookkeepers are there to answer tough questions. When a client approaches me and they say like, okay, last month we only made 10%, according to our budgets and projections, we should have made, let's say, 20% or 30%. That's where the $1 million question hits, and that's where it kind of gets very challenging. Like, what do you tell the client now? Like,
Mm.
so the books need to be really clear to understand how you got to that 10%, and to kind of understand how the numbers work. And then once you have that clear path where you kind of understand what's going on, then you can make better business decisions. And in terms of, let's say, I would say one thing what I'm not good at is, I'm not, like, when it comes to do a sale, like,
Mhm.
I always try to be very clear with the customer. I give them like the right side, and if I see it's not a fit, I'll tell them, because ultimately at the end of the day, I focus more on the long run than the short term. And I'd say most of our customers come through referral and word of mouth,
Mhm.
which kind of says that, we service a lot of customers, and we kind of bring them. But we would always try to focus um, on them having clarity. And part of what we do is, like, when we set up a customer, we have an onboarding session with them. So we kind of have first like the technical setup. So they sign up, they give us the credit card, they connect the Amazon accounts, all the APIs, and we wait like a couple of days for the system to load all the information. And then we'll have another call with them, which will have a onboarding session. The onboarding session will be done by a highly experienced bookkeeper, which would walk them through the different options and kind of explain to them how it's done. I give you like a story that I had. I had a customer once, which actually was more hands on the bookkeeping, and their P&L showed at the end of the month that they made $75,000 net income. And I was, I knew there's no money in the bank, so I knew something is wrong.
Mm.
I'm like, because at a glance it looked all okay, and this was before they actually haven't used my software at that point. They used to, we were doing that bookkeeping, but they used to do something called Vendor Central. So on Amazon, there's like two ways you can sell. They call it 1P and 3P. You can kind of either be a vendor to Amazon, where, let's say, you're selling whatever you're selling, you can call up Amazon and say, okay, let's say I'm selling cups, so I got like a whole stack of them, and Amazon would like buy it from you. And then the other option is and then Amazon would pay, let's say, after 30 or 60 days. Or the other option is that you keep it in your warehouse, or you send it into FBA, but the product is still owned by you, and you get paid after every sale. So they were kind of doing first originally Vendor Central, and then there was a lot of fraud going on there. So Amazon kind of put like a hard stop from one day to the next. So a lot of people just like, their whole business shifted. And then people had to move to start selling on Amazon, where they only got paid after their product sold. So this customer, so after they were actually doing at that point Vendor Central, and this was at that point of transition, like the first month where they transitioned into Seller Central, where they were actually selling it themselves on Amazon. So they were doing FBA, which means fulfillment by Amazon. That means, say, they take a pallet of stuff and they just ship it out to Amazon. And what they decided to do is they shipped out like $100,000 worth of goods. It was $100,000 worth of goods, and they decided they're selling it on Amazon, and after all the fees, they want to hit a 40% markup. So let me say, if whatever, let's say the product cost them $10, they wanted to be after Amazon fees at $14. Now,
Okay.
if that meant they had to sell it at 20 or 25, I don't know. So they decided to do an invoice of like $140,000. So like, where it had $40,000 profit, and 100,000 was the cost. So they invoiced it towards that. The problem of that was that, first of all, the product was never sold. So kind of like when I started digging through the books and I was like, what is this huge invoice for? They're like, well, we sent out a shipment. So I had a few questions to them. First of all, the product is not yours. It's not sold. You don't know how long it's going to take. You can't record revenue this month
Mm.
just because you sent a shipment to FBA. It's still yours, because if you want, you can call it back. It's technically your possession. Second problem is, who told you you're going to net 40% markup? Who gave you that idea? I know that you want to. It sounds cool, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen, because there's so many fees. You don't even know all the fees. Prices go up and down. Sometimes you need to lower your price of $1 in order to start moving some material, and it might be worth it sometimes. If you move more stuff and you sell, meaning even if you sell a little lower profit margin, but if you get a faster turnover ratio and a smaller shelf life, it's better for you in that sense as well.
Mhm.
So I said, these are way too early to know how to book it. And it doesn't make sense. You never sold the products. So we kind of had to delete that whole invoice, and we kind of had to take that inventory in QuickBooks and market that was sent to FBA. So that kind of turned around the whole game and the whole picture of that. So that's kind of like where, bookkeepers come in. And this is kind of like where we focus on clarity. Like it says you made $75,000 a month. You should have at least something in the bank. It shouldn't be down to $2,000. So if you're just making invoices and doing markups because you like to, that just doesn't work. And actually, they don't make anywhere between 40 or 50,000 a month on Amazon. They're actually doing now, I would say, probably like around 200,000 a month on Amazon, and their net profit is maybe 10%. So they're netting like 18 to 20,000. I mean, on Amazon, everyone is different. I've seen people selling 200,000 on Amazon and making 100,000 profit. It depends really on what industry you're in. It depends what you sell. It depends on a lot of different variables. It depends who takes care of your PPC and all those other stuff. What I'm saying is that, they were on this assumption, that they thought that from 100,000, they were going to have 40. Meanwhile, from 200, they're only netting 20%, 10%, which is like around $20,000 a month.
So I mean, I'm listening to you. I mean, and again, obviously, your accountant runs through your blood, your system. Like I hear you writing off the numbers, you know the numbers cold, and like that makes what the software does even so much more better because again, you're building it from an accountant standpoint. So what I want to do is kind of go back a little bit. What kind of household did you grow up in? Did you grow up in a household that was full with entrepreneurs and accountants, or were you just like that kid that always counted something and then that turned into your passion later on?
So I did not. My father is a teacher. And I grew up in a household with entrepreneurs. Um, but the fact that he was a teacher, that pushed me not to stay in that line. It's not like they make who knows what.
Hmm.
If you go in business, sky's the limit. So that's really where I kind of had, set aside where I want to go. Um, I was always good with numbers, always liked math. My father's very good with numbers. And I always enjoyed technology. Always enjoyed that kind of hacks. And even as a kid, I remember when the iPod came out, and not the iPods before that even. Not the iPad, the iPod, right? The iPad with a wheel.
Yeah.
Remember, we still had the wheel spinning there, and we had the iPod, the iPad Mini, then we got the Shuffle Mix, and then we got the iPad Touch, and then finally came the amazing iPhone. And so I was always into technology, always into all the other stuff. But this really didn't run too much in my family. Didn't really. I'm saying I'm like kind of like I would say completely out of that. Like not
Hmm.
really.
So, like, obviously, I mean, you've been on this journey for a period of time, right? So, I mean, like, how long have you been building out this software, and how long have you been an accountant combined together?
So I I'll give you a good background. So as I started out, I I got married at a very young age. If you're probably familiar with my background from Brooklyn, we all got married at very young. So I was kind of married at a young stage, and I was the age of 20 and looking to earn a living.
Mhm.
So I was kind of studying a little bit at that point. Like we studied a little bit right after we got married, and then at some point it was time for me to go find a job. I sent out my resume to at least 50 places. Nobody responded. It was back in 2011 when we right after the '08 crash. People were very skeptical. I also lived more in a suburb area, which actually today is very built up, and these like jobs today are just laying on the floor wherever you step. There's a job. But back in the days, this place was not so built up where I live now. So the jobs, it wasn't like flowing with jobs. I remember begging somebody if you can give me an office position to do bookkeeping for
Mhm.
$12 an hour. And I fell on deaf ears. So I was kind of looking to do something and had a very hard time. So at that point, I decided that first thing that I would do is I became a cab driver. So I had a friend of mine who ran a cab company, and he was like, maybe you want to come drive for us? Because I told him I needed money. So I was like, no, I'm going to find a normal job. And went by 3 weeks. I had no choice. I told him, okay, listen, I'm in for it. So
Mhm.
I drove around for like a good 6, 7 months. And at that time, I was always thinking what I want to do. And I did have my eyes open of like opening my own business, but I had a problem that, since I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family, stuff like that, I was like really on my own. I didn't feel like I had something like I remember I wanted to open a rental car company,
Mhm.
but I didn't like know even the basics. Like, okay, so where am I going to get money to fund this? How am I going to do it? How am I going to start? Like, how am I going to get customers? How am I going to do this? Like, there's too much like vague, like too many stuff that I didn't know, which that like held me back from like just jumping because I didn't want to just do like a stupid move, like just jump and splurge 20, $30,000 and kind of like get lost in between all that. So I kind of thought of a career at that point, and what was available at that point was accounting. Sounded like a very good career, and my goal originally was to open a CPA firm, my own CPA, and there was courses that they were being offered for business people like after hours. So I would go to school on Sundays
Mhm.
and evenings. So I was able to work still full time plus attend school. So that was a good part, and that's why I chose. And I figured that will fit with my personality. Kind of made sense at that point. So I said I'm gonna do my bachelor's and then work on my master's and kind of pursue accounting career. So that's really how I started. And then as I was I was actually working as a driver, and I was driving, I would say 10 hours a day. We had to be I was in the car at 8 in the morning till 6. And it was quite a long time. And then I decided that I would get CDL license. So I figured school bus, they paid quite decent at that point. And I was thinking that I can drive a school bus like 5, 6 hours a day. And then I would have more time to study for college in
Mhm.
order to get my master's. So I got CDL license. I still have it today. Very proud of it. And I took all the road tests and I passed everything. And then as I passed the road test, the manager of the car service company called me up and said, "Hey, we need another dispatcher in the office. Do you want to become a dispatcher?"
Mhm.
So the dispatcher is very different. It was before the times of Uber. And the thing of our car service is very community based. Like we served a certain area. Um, and what we tried to do was like if we would drop you off at a certain street, if the driver should have a pickup like from that street or like a minute away, because if the drivers had to travel too far empty, they didn't make enough money.
Mhm.
So that it was a challenging job because we had at some points like 35 drivers, and I'll be sitting on the phone there and getting like 6 to 7 incoming calls every second. And I was like, I had to make split-second decisions. Do we have a car for you? I tell you, sorry, we can't service you. And we kind of had to look all around. And you also wanted to make sure that the drivers get the best calls so they make the most money.
Mhm.
Because if drivers don't make money, then they leave.
Yeah.
So I was at that point already being on the road for 6, 7 months. I was fed up with being on the road. So I figured that I'm gonna leave the CDL on the side and I'll become a dispatcher, which was an easier job, was 9 to 5 in the office, and then there's somebody else to dispatch at night. So I became the dispatcher, and I was there for like another 6 months as a dispatcher. And then the manager of the company actually left. The manager of the company opened his own business, and they were without a manager. So they were looking for somebody else. And at that point, they said, the manager told the boss, like, listen, you got a qualified candidate in the office. He's the dispatcher, but he can technically manage the business.
Mhm.
Why don't you just take him? So he wasn't sure because I was very young, but I was like 21, 22 at that age. And I got promoted at the end. So I got promoted to being a manager. It was a very hard position. Besides managing a business and running a cab company is not an easy business. We also worked around the clock. The business opened at 8 in the morning and we closed till 10 at night, and we were Sundays every single day. So I took on the position, and I still continued the school. So I finished my BA, graduated, and then I enrolled for my master's program, and I
Mhm.
started the master's in accounting. So the master's was really, really hard. And then I found myself in a position where I was unable to do both. I was like, either I stay the car service manager or I pursue my accounting career. So I called my uncle at that point and I told him, like, what am I supposed to do? I was like, I started this accounting career like 2 years ago because I had no job. But at this point, I have a job. I'm making money. It's a good paying job. It's also a good job. I'm proud of it. And he's like, what do you like? What should I do here? So his question was to me, he's like, Nachman, what do you want to look like when you're 30 years old? Do you want to be a car service manager or do you want to be an accountant?
Hmm.
So I said, I'd rather be an accountant. He's like, can you afford to do the school? I said, yeah. He's like, if you can do it, just go for it. So I took his word. And the next day I left. I called up my boss. I told him I want to leave.
Hmm.
So like, hey, what's going on? I said, listen, I'm interested in my career and I don't want to stick around. So he said, okay. And then I started to, so then I continued. So what happened was my boss at that point owned two businesses. He owned a kitchen company, which was a wholesaler. Plus he also ran a car service company. So I met with him and he said, okay, fine. You want to leave, you want to leave. 2 days later, he calls me back. He's like, listen, you're a qualified guy. You want to leave. So what happened? Oh, what happened was the way I was able to leave so fast was because I still had my CDL license. So I called a different school and I said, hey, you're looking for new drivers? And like, yeah. I said, I'm ready to come. And the guys looked at me like, what? You're the manager thing. You want to come drive? I said, yeah, I want to do it. So I already had a job like 2 days later to drive a school bus. And I figured I'll just do a school bus and go back to school for one more year, finish my master's, and then I'll go to an accounting firm and try to get a regular job. In between, my boss called me back and said, listen, you gave me notice already on your regular, you gave me notice. He said, I usually don't take employees from one company to the next, but it happens to be you're going for accounting. We're looking for somebody to do the bookkeeping in our company. So I told him, sounds amazing. So bookkeeping was easier because it was more of an office job. If I wanted to go to school, when I went to school after 6 o'clock, my phone was off and Sundays I didn't work. I was able to attend school. So I ended up accepting his offer as a bookkeeping. And I had to find somebody else to replace my other job as a bus driver. So I actually never ended up driving a bus. I have CDL, but I never drove a bus. But so I ended up going back into the bookkeeping, and I was there for like a good 3.5, 4 years. And at the same time, I was continuing through school. And eventually, once I graduated, I started to look into different options of, kind of doing stuff. So even after I graduated, I had a hard time finding a job at an accounting firm. So one option was to go like to Manhattan and join the big fours. I wasn't really up to so much going corporate and start, it wasn't so much up my sleeve to kind of do that. I tried to look more for the local CPA firms. So the local CPA firms usually are like 2 or 3 to 15 people, like usually that size, and not too much bigger than that. But a lot of times an individual like me, they can see as a threat because, I was coming with a lot of experience, but they're kind of like, okay, so you're going to sit here for 2 years and then you're going to leave and just take all our clients and go on your own. So I was too honest. So I didn't want to say that, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm planning to sit here my whole life. So I said, yes, I plan on leaving. I don't plan on sticking around too long. So that made me in a very hard position of finding a job to work for an accountant. So at that point, I decided I'm just going to open a bookkeeping company because bookkeeping is what I've been doing for the last 4 years. And our initial approach when we opened up the bookkeeping wasn't just like plain bookkeeping. So a lot of people just do plain bookkeeping. What we do is we also offer like CFO services. And the thing about the CFO services is if the books are done right and things are properly structured, then the CFO and the advisory services is very easy because you kind of know what's going on. If I do your bookkeeping, I know your business cold, then I can right away tell you, hey, listen, you're losing money here, you're losing money there. For example, I have now a client that's going through a hard time and they hired this huge consultant to go through. But what ends up happening is that I'm sitting with the consultant like 2 hours and I'm like telling him all the problems and they always come back to agree with me. I already told them where the problems are. So he's kind of now trying to like work with the client and trying to like, do some psychology work with them and trying to like get them to like agree that this is the problem and kind of work to solve it. So our initial approach was to do bookkeeping and then offer the service, the CFO advisory services. And we told clients, like instead of hiring somebody in-house, just outsource it to an expert. And once a month, we'll go with you the books and we know how to make sure it's properly done. You're very good at selling at what you're selling, but doesn't mean that you know how to do bookkeeping. And we're very good at bookkeeping, doesn't know you know how to sell your product. So you kind of need the two of them. And we'll make sure that the books are done properly. And we'll work with you the ups and downs of the businesses and kind of show you where you're making and where you're losing. And then at some point, and that's when we started the bookkeeping company. And then as I told you, we started working with Amazon sellers and we kind of jumped into the software as well. And then kind of was interesting because our bookkeeping company took a 360 as well. So originally we did any type of bookkeeping. Like we worked with contractors, we worked with wholesalers, we worked with urgent cares, we worked with doctors' offices. We did all different types of businesses. And then when we started, ConnectBooks, what ended up happening was I was very involved in the software, and we stopped getting other businesses because we weren't doing any major sales. And we started getting a lot of bookkeeping requests through our regular software. So people who would call in and say, we would tell them, okay, you can use the software. Like, yeah, but we need somebody to do the bookkeeping. So you know what? We can either do like a full package where we do the full bookkeeping for you, or you can kind of just take the software and do it yourself, or you can use a different bookkeeper. We're okay with any way. So what ended up happening was we got a lot of bookkeeping accounts through our software, a lot of bookkeeping business. So we kind of took our bookkeeping business and we kind of decided that we're going to specialize just in e-commerce. So our bookkeeping company today does only bookkeeping with e-commerce. We only accept e-commerce customers, and it's a win-win situation because it's a win. We explain to every customer very simple. We hire bookkeepers. However, if the bookkeeper has no clue what's flying on in your business, and if they're going to be this massive expert for 20 years bookkeeping, obviously they're not going to be working for us. They're going to be some CFO in some big company. So obviously we're hiring more to the junior side. But when you hire to the junior side, you have to make sure that the employees really know what they're doing. And when you work one day in a contractor company, and one day you work in a wholesale, then you work in a plumber, then you work in a kitchen company, it's very hard to become an expert in all these different areas. And you have to, because every business has its own niche and has a different, how they're working. Like, for example, this contractor that I work with, his main money he made was off his contractor fee that he charged you 15%. So we need to keep track of every single job, he's doing. So he's renovating a house. So, okay, so the plumber charges $20,000. Now we need to bill him that 15%. And but one second, but we can't pay the plumber in full because we have to leave like $3,000 open in case he doesn't finish the job. So that's how we get him to come back. With Amazon, you don't have that, So every company is so different, and all these little stuff make it very hard to scale a service-based business in that end. Like if you wanna scale a service-based business, you have to make sure that you dumb down the process dumb enough that it can just be repeated very simple. And that's how you're good at what you're doing. So in the e-commerce space, we were able to do that. We were able to take our bookkeeping company, and since we only do Amazon we mean Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Shopify. So we have the software that kind of automates the hard part of the bookkeeping, and then we do the rest of it, in terms of the other stuff. So when a client calls us, we tell them, listen, you can, this is what we do, and we only do e-commerce. So you can go to any other bookkeeping company, but very few out there specialize just in e-commerce. And since we specialize just in e-commerce, you're going to get the most for your money because the amount you're paying us is the same that you would pay for any other bookkeeping company, and you're going to get an expert bookkeeper. So when we hire someone new, we have to do one thing: train them how to do bookkeeping for e-commerce. We don't have to train them how to run 20 different businesses. We don't have to train them how to do bookkeeping for a contractor, wholesaler, and then an Amazon business and all that. We have our standard way how we work, and we kind of take all our customers and blend them into our method, how we do bookkeeping. And that kind of streamlines the whole process. So this has been going already for the last year and a half. We're in our bookkeeping company where we just service Amazon, and it's been amazing.
So I think part of what you said is, first and foremost, the fact that you're in New York and you're driving taxis and potentially driving school buses, you're kind of an adrenaline junkie undercover, right? Obviously anyone that has been to New York before, they understand that taxi drivers are absolutely crazy people, right? Just so you drove that for 6 to 7 months. That
Yeah,
by
and
itself.
I have a soft spot in them. I have a real soft spot. Whenever I'm on the road and a cab wants to pass me, I always pull over and I let them go. I'm
Oh,
like, they're on the road for 10 hours
yeah.
and you're on the road for 20 minutes and you just finish working. And also keep in mind, as a taxi, if I was to speed and I would drop off my passenger 2 minutes early, that means I started the next call 2 minutes. So it could go even more than that. It's if you finish now, sometimes let's say it's not so busy. So if you finish faster and you finish a minute before a different driver, so you already get the next call, versus the other driver can now wait 10 minutes for another call.
Mm,
And he doesn't make any money because it's all commission based on what you bring in. So you
gotcha.
kind of have to know how to stuff. I remember that. I used to know, let's say if I would hit a certain red light, I would know that if I go to the turn, when it turns green, first it will turn on a turn signal, and a minute later it would turn green. So if I was to get somewhere and I knew I can go either straight or turn, but if I'm gonna hit the red light, I'll just go into the turning lane because the turning light is gonna come on a second faster. I'll get there like 20 seconds earlier. But it wasn't like about being it wasn't it's never like, even if I did ever drive a little fast, never like about being wild or something like that. It was always just about, we wanted to bring home money
Mhm.
and we just need to feed our families. And when it was raining, like in the summer when you have like these real thunderstorms and you can barely see out your windshield. I remember I got a call at that point to take somebody from here to like a neighborhooding city. It's like if you're going, let's say, from Brooklyn to Bushwick, I don't know, it's like a random day. It shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes. It took me not even, it took you like 15 minutes in a random day. Since it was pouring, it took me like 25 to 30 minutes because I was careful at the end. It wasn't like I wasn't a maniac. I was a careful driver. And I remember by the time I dropped that person off, I didn't get any call in that area and we didn't operate in that area. So I had to come all the way back.
Hmm.
It took me like a good 50, 60 minutes. The customer paid me then what, $15 for that call? And I got 50%. So I got 750,
So
for driving 50 minutes in treacherous rain.
you had said something that made me think about this next question. I mean, you're talking about making money for your family, and you were doing all this. I think you said you was age 21, 22, but the audience doesn't know as of yet until now that you have 4 kids. So, like, my next question is like, how the hell were you managing all these different things and having 4 kids and doing the hustle and going to school all at the same time?
First of all, who said I was managing?
Okay, okay, okay.
Doesn't it was tough, and guess what? It still is tough.
Mm,
But however, when you kind of see it down the line, you kind of you see the beauty of it. You see, there's nothing like having gorgeous children and come home after their work and they come running to the door and you play with them and you kind of see them, take after you. Like there's nothing like that.
mm,
And that's really what keeps you going. Um, it was, I'm saying in the beginning, obviously, when I was still driving, I only had, I think it was before I had any kids. And, it was only, I have 4 kids, but it's over the last 11 years.
mm.
So in the beginning, we had 1 or 2 kids. It was a little, and I mean, I was a lot on my own. Pretty much my wife took care of it. I mean, even today, like these times when I still stay in the office till 10 o'clock at night. I mean, even if we have as many employees as I have, there's always work that still piles up and I'm trying to delegate as much as possible. And every time I have the ability to just hire another person, or sometimes we don't have the right person, we have to find somebody who fits that skill set and could kind of take that, we'll get them. But I can still stay in the office till 10 o'clock at night. And there's many times where I come home, my kids are sleeping, and I wake up a little late in the morning because I've been up to 11, 12 o'clock. I need my sleep. By the time I wake up, they already went on the bus and they're off to school. And I can go by like 3 or 4 days when I don't see them.
Wow. Wow. So I mean that's definitely something that's interesting. I mean, obviously with every entrepreneur, like we're all doing this for the legacy of our kids, and obviously there's some times where like you may not be able to see your kids. So like my next question is like, where do you see you and your business 20 years from now? Where ideally do you want it to be?
So yeah, I don't think I don't want to see myself. I mean, these times I work, say, 14 hours a day, even these days. Um, I mean, it's very different what I'm doing today than what I've been doing 8 years ago, 9 years ago, because today ultimately what I do it with a passion. Like I feel like I'm doing something for my time. I feel like I'm building something, and it's something that I'm helping a lot of businesses. I'm helping a lot of people, and it's something I'm really proud of. Ultimately, I don't want to see myself in 20 years from now on the same stage.
Mm,
So we're kind of looking, and I would say probably like within the next year, I'm looking to settle the business where it kind of should start taking it over on its own. And what I do in business is every division in the company, I'm trying to get somebody in there for me to
mm,
kind of manage that space. So for example, let's say development. We're running now a team of 5 full-time developers, but we got top-notch developers. So like our main developer, you're familiar with B&H Photo, right?
mm.
From Manhattan.
Yeah.
So our CTO was the head of security in B&H Photo. So we kind of grabbed someone like that, and they're capable enough. So I can sit on this podcast. Or actually, last week I was in Austin, Texas for a full week. I was there was a seller summit, like Amazon sellers get together, and it was was called the $1 billion Seller Summit. The BDSS was pretty much like really eight, 9 figure sellers, and I was there for the week, kind of networking with all these great individuals, and I got a lot of contact information, a lot of leads to follow up with. Um, this show was from Monday through Thursday, and I kind of decided last week Sunday afternoon that I was going. So Sunday night is when I booked my ticket, and Monday morning, 5 o'clock I got into my car. 6 o'clock I was at the airport, and at 7 o'clock my flight took off, and I was there till Thursday. So kind of like I just notified my team, hey, I'll be out for the week, and the only way I was able to do that is because we got the right people in place taking on stuff. So there's still a lot of stuff that's falling on my plate, because there's kind of a lot of, like, as a CEO, you wear a lot of different hats. So each time as I can shape out a new position and kind of take those responsibilities and find the right person, we get them, and that's how we can scale the team and scale the company.
So, I mean, let's talk about, let's say I am someone that's 20, 21 years old, right? I'm listening to your story, and I see myself wanting to get into Amazon or FBA, getting into Walmart, wanting to get into the eCom space. What words of wisdom do you have for me to help me continue on my journey to be successful?
So what I would say the best thing is, I know people like to be, I would say, first of all, one thing I do want to say, Amazon is not a career. People make that mistake. Amazon is not a career, and Amazon is not a side hustle. Amazon is a business. And a business means that you can make money and you can also lose all your money. A side hustle, what I mean to say, is also people think that they can take a full-time job and at night do it. That has been the case a couple of years ago, but recently there's a lot of competition and Amazon is constantly evolving, stuff are changing. So, Amazon is pretty much a full-time game if you're looking to get into it. I would say the good thing about Amazon is that it's an easy way in. Meaning to say, the idea of not having to run your own warehouse, the idea of having, like, let's say, for example, if you were to bring in a very successful product and you would bring in 20,000 units, and all of a sudden in one day you're getting 2,000 orders. There's no way you can manage that unless you're prepped for that properly. And that usually comes after years and years having your own business and building a warehouse with a team and getting a warehouse manager, a shipping manager, receiving manager, right? In Amazon, you don't need that. They take care of all that. So if you have one day 200 orders, if you have one day 2,000 orders, for Amazon, that's no difference. And that's kind of the easy and success path which Amazon lays forward for you in order for you to grow very fast. So that's kind of the good part of the beauty of Amazon. But what I would say is, for the most thing, is don't jump too fast. I've seen many times people just like get very like aggressive, and they kind of buy a lot of stuff, and then they stay over with like a lot of garbage, and then they're like, oh, Amazon doesn't work. I've seen it from like 15 different angles, Amazon, and there's a lot of good people out there. I mean, there's a lot of courses. Like, for example, I joined the $1 billion Seller Summit. That's not for beginners, but there is a lot of like masterminds, groups, networking events you can go to. There's a lot of like smaller them that are only a couple $100. And I would say the best investment you could do in yourself is an education, because that kind of sticks with you. And if you educate yourself properly how the Amazon games work, and you go to these networking events, which is very, very important. I never used to understand what's so important of a networking event. And today I do, because you just sometimes meet somebody and they like just tell you about one little hack they've done, and that might save your business. So they can tell you about some software that they've used, which you never heard about, or you've never even thought about it, or you kind of like get to see all that. So there's a lot out there. And I would say, like, even 4 years ago when I started, the software, there's maybe like barely any trade shows. I mean, at this point, there's probably like over at least 50 events going out throughout the year. There's almost like every other week another event somewhere around the world for Amazon sellers. So there's so much out there that you can learn, and just make sure you're well educated and you understand what you're doing before you like just jump in cold.
Got it. So if let's say somebody's listening and they want to get in contact with you, they want to probably get a trial use of your software, where can they go to get access?
Yeah, so they can just go to our website, connectbooks.com, and they can just like either sign up for a free trial, or on the website we have a chat option. We got live chat. They can either chat with the sales team, and we'll help them. We'll help them get set up.
Very cool.
And we do have a special promo for the listeners of this podcast. We'll give additional 10% off for the first 12 months of their subscription, and the coupon code is going to be BOSS BOSS. This is limited to the first 25 people who sign up.
Great, great. So, going into like the bonus round, and I'm pretty interested to kind of hear what your answer is going to be to this question. If you could spend 24 hours with anyone, that person could be dead or alive. You could spend these 24 hours uninterrupted with that person. Who would it be and why?
Oh my, that's a tough question. That's a tough question. I mean, I would probably want to spend. I mean, I don't. It would be hard for me to say a name, but like, I would probably want to spend it with a good business coach, like a really extremely talented, someone like super smart, who understands the world in a different way. It's like if you ever read the book of How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Mhm.
it's kind of like from Dale Carnegie. It's like kind of like explaining how people are just human reactions. Like it's the way like how to communicate with people. Like sometimes when people get upset, it's just like if you look through the lens, you actually see that's a person behind it. It's a qualified person. It's just some kind of reaction that they have, and that alone, for example, in business, that can help you succeed a lot because if you want to be a CEO, the bigger you are, the more money you're gonna make. I mean, that's the usual game. And if you're a big company, you kind of need to have good people skills. You need to be able to you need to be able to work along with people, and everybody has their like ins and outs. And the kind of the trick of the CEO is being a leader, but when you lead, you want to make sure your workers follow you in the right direction that you want to lead a company, and it's the way how you get the message. So I would probably want to, have kind of understanding on that part more like that helps a lot out. And then kind of understanding risk management and, those stuff that really would help out. I wouldn't have an exact name to put in there.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, you brought us around to the books, and I remember listening to a podcast that you were on. You was a guest, and you were saying that one of your favorite books at the time was E Myth. So my next question is like on the book spectrum, why was that book such a prominent book for you?
So the E-Myth was really, really on in my career. I mean, the beginning, I didn't really, I mean, didn't, I moved a lot from there. So
Mm,
with the E-Myth kind of like, I mean, explains a lot is what happens is when you start a business, and I had it actually in my company, and it was very interesting because when I read the book, I felt like the guy's like, he's like telling the future of my company.
mm,
He's like every chapter, like, hey, how do you know what's going on in my business? How do you know what's going on? And it was kind of like in a short, I would say, is that in the book, basically what happens is you start a company, and I was like one guy myself. I was doing bookkeeping. And I started like, how did I start? Took my phone, went through all my contacts, called everybody in the world I ever knew, and said, hey, I opened a business and I'm doing so and so. Do you want my services or not? And we picked up 5 or 6 customers that way. And, because when I started from one day to next, I had no business.
mm,
So then what happens is you hire an employee. So this is, I see a lot of times in small businesses, you hire someone who's very qualified. Like you can hire somebody who's a hard worker, somebody who means just good, and they're there to support you throughout the journey. However, and I've heard this from a lot of other business owners, is when the business grows, that employee expects to like grow right under you and
mm,
to become like the next major employee in the company. Now, a qualified employee doesn't always mean they're a manager. A manager is somebody who has people skills. A manager is somebody who can hit deadlines. I can hit a deadline if I stay up to 12 o'clock at night, but that's not the goal in business. The goal in business is that my employees hit the deadline. So I have to make sure that I somehow incentivize them enough that they're willing
mm,
to work. On the other hand, feel like I'm not getting on their nerves. On the other hand, they're not going to stay here past 5, and I don't want them to stay past 5 because otherwise they get burnt out. So you
mm.
kind of have like a challenge on like how to get stuff done on time without lifting a finger. So that's a skill on its own in terms of managing employees. A good employee doesn't always mean that they can be your manager. A good employee, could be. So I was kind of going through that mistake, and it costed me a lot. It costed me a good employee where we took the guy who my first employee in the bookkeeping company. And as we got more employees, he officially was supposed to manage other employees. However, he just was terrible at that. It just didn't work out. and customers were getting very frustrated, very upset. And we kind of told them that, okay, listen, we need to reverse. And I never thought of it in that way, like never thought in the depthness of like what means people skills, how to manage people, how to manage employees, how to kind of train people. And that's where we kind of got hit with. And then we had to like kind of reshift and refocus. And I took over a little bit the managing part, and then we got more employees to kind of execute other stuff. And that's kind of how we tried to work today.
Hmm.
So it's that was like a eye opener, which I felt like, and I've seen it a lot of companies is where like they run the mom pop business, and then as their company all of a sudden starts to expand, they think that their mom pop employees can do, and just run the company as they would.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Well, I definitely appreciate you being on the show today, and obviously going into closing of this particular episode. I'd like to give you an opportunity to become the host of the Boston Cage podcast. So, I mean, obviously, we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about FBA, we talked about Amazon, we talked about accounting, we talked about your software. And anyone that's listening, I would definitely recommend at least take this software to heed, test it out. Because again, if you're in that environment and what this software is going to do for you, it'll pay for itself 10 times over. So, in closing, I want you to kind of think about you're a host of a podcast now. What questions do you have for me?
Why do you have a podcast?
So a podcast for me, like an original part of it was just kind of like me trying to figure out like my next thing that I was going to do, and then it turned into like a legacy. And I always say, look at a podcast as leaving the documentations of where you are in business, what happens in your business, what things you overcame in your business, but you're recording all this content and you're leaving it behind for other entrepreneurs to listen to, and you're also leaving it behind for your legacy to listen to. So like the conversation with you and I, it's a conversation. We're talking about Amazon fulfillment. We're talking about shipping. We're talking about taxes. We're talking about numbers. There's somebody in this world sooner or later that will listen to this episode and get something fruitful from it and use it and take action.
Wow. I mean, a lot of owners usually like try to take podcasts more as like spreading the network and kind of that, but that's an interesting take. It's very valuable to see that, you give away this amount of time to kind of do the podcast, just like for the legacy. That's super, super amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to. I mean, if you look at like Rockefeller and you look at all the like the major billionaires in our lifetime. I mean, obviously they do things to raise revenue and to build money, but again, like what they instilled in their families for generations was more so the legacy than anything else. The money was just there to support what they wanted them to grow and do and develop after they were dead and gone.
Right. Wow. And who is your biggest business coach that you follow?
Oh man, wow! It comes down to because I always say like I have a split personality disorder, right? So in one side I'm a marketer, the other side I'm a podcaster, I'm an author, I'm a designer. So I try to syndicate based upon whatever I'm working on primarily at that point in time. I would say Tony Robbins is a good general because he's a great marketer, but he's also by default a great speaker that then makes legacy look very easy. And without him even doing it, he's a podcaster by default. So looking at his systems in place, another person that I look at pretty frequently on the authorship side of things is Ty Cohen, just because of what he's built. And obviously we call him the Kindle Cash Flow King, and it's for good reason. Like he's systematized Kindle to where anyone can come in off the street and learn how to make money, make revenue from Kindle, and he does it so effectively.
Wow. Yeah, systems and processes are probably like one of the. It's like it's one of the places we're heading now is like to kind of like have SOPs in place,
Mm.
and I kind of find that businesses that have good SOPs and that have stuff written down, like if an employee comes, an employee leaves, it's like just very easy to kind of just like swap and get things around, and it just makes it just makes transition easy. It makes anything easy. It's like anytime I have a question, like, oh, I don't have to like explain you now. Here's a document. Just go read this and you have your answer, or like watch
Yeah,
this video and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, SOPs are. I mean, I don't see how businesses could. Well, then again, most businesses don't operate for long without essentially building SOPs, and they'll never scale without them. So.
Right. But it's annoying to build them.
Oh hell yeah, they're tedious as hell, and a lot of times it's in your head, and you're trying to. What I've learned with like what I'm doing my SOPs is I create videos. So every time I'm doing a task for my team, instead of me sending an email, I'll record a 5, 10, 15 minute clip, and then that video could then be transcribed and then get a writer to then convert that into an SOP. But by default, the video was always there, and I could always just send someone to that video to watch it, and I'll show them the steps on what I want them to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I use a lot Loom. I love Loom Video. If anyone like looks for like a good like desktop software, I use Loom. Probably have like over 1,000 videos at this point recorded. Like anytime I need to do something, sometimes like instead of just sitting for an hour and writing this complicated email and go there, you just turn on screen recording, get your mic on, and just like, no, hey, look, you go right over here, you see this, you do that, and then you kind of get it and get it in place and get it moving.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I think you bring a great point because even to the point now, I do that with invoices because a lot of times what I've realized that the conversion point for invoices fall apart with not knowing what those price items are utilized for. So someone will look at an invoice and be like, "What is this line item?" And 9 out of 10 times they won't even ask you. They just probably be like, "Okay, whatever, I'll get back to you." But if you send a video explainer and you go through line by line and you tell them that this is for this, this is what the rates are, and they can see you and see what you're talking about, it converts them way more than it wouldn't convert them if you
mhm,
didn't do it before.
yeah, I guess we can all agree video is probably the best today.
For facts, for sure, for sure. Well, I mean, not man, I definitely appreciate you being on the show today, man. You're definitely a great guest. I mean, you have so much insight and ingenuity into the Amazon fulfillment space as far as when it goes into the accounting and the bookkeeping, and obviously you're doing that with Walmart and Shopify and eBay as well too. So I definitely want to say thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great being here.
Great. S.A. Grant.